Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I recently was requested by a viewer to give my 5 favorite topwater baits. And guys, this is a topic that I don't know that I can come up with 5. I have picked out 5, but just because I have 5 here doesn't mean I don't have about another 5 or 10 that I really like. The thing is, those are a little bit more situational in terms of topwaters, but I've got here 5 that are absolute fish catching machines down to the specific color. Honestly, this is a category that I could talk about forever. I love topwaters. I think topwaters can generate some of the biggest bites you'll get for all of the species of bass that are out there. And at the same time, there are lots of times when a topwater will outproduce any other bait. I don't know why it is, but there are times the fish will key in specifically on a topwater bait and not hit a submerged bait. So topwater bait is something you almost always want to have tied on if you have the ability to have multiple rods with you. And these are some of the baits that I would highly recommend. Now, I will state that a couple of these baits are discontinued, so good luck trying to find them. I fortunately have a whole box of these baits. This is actually my topwater tournament box. I just pulled this out of my boat. It's just a box that I've got a whole pile of stuff, and I've got, I probably have 100 or so baits in here. The reality is there's probably only 10 or 15 different baits in itself. So once I find a topwater bait that I like, I really hone in on them specifically. So let's get started, guys. These are my 5 favorite topwaters. Pretty much going all the way back to the time I was a kid. I mean, some of these baits are pretty old. So let's start it off with potentially, I don't even have an order with these. This is just how they are. These are the ones I'm going to grab. This is the old school Chug Bug Chrome Blueback. Definitely a bait that still catches them today and has been one of those baits that have caught them forever. This was one of my first true topwater baits ever since the Chug Bug came out by storm. They had a whole song. I had a t-shirt that said, I think it was, "Oh, that poppin', walking, twitching, chugging thing they call the Chug Bug," or something like that. But the old school Chug Bug, I'm not as big of a fan of the new version that Rapala is making. I like the old school Storm pre-Rapala version. Specifically, Chrome Blueback is one you absolutely cannot beat. Bleeding Tennessee Shad was another one that I really liked. But this bait just provides a little bit of a different sound than most topwaters. It's a very loud bait, but it almost sounds more metallic to me than a lot of the other baits where you just hear the rattles. In this case, I feel like you hear the bait itself versus just the rattle. So that's one of my go-tos. And the thing is, like I said, that's a discontinued bait. You can still find them, and they're still relatively cheap, but they're getting harder to find. Next up, the Knocker Spook Jr. This is the, it's like the clear, sexy shad color, I believe is what it's called, but this is the translucent one. This bait has been probably one of my best walking baits over the course of my tournament career. I have caught a lot of really big fish on this and had some really good tournament finishes. The one thing I'll say is every time I look at this bait, I think back to one of my first Forest Wood Cups on Lake Murray, where I had just caught a 5-pounder. I went like 2 docks down a bank and I hooked up with a 4-pounder, and I ended up having the hook hanger pull out of the bait. So that was one of those things that had I caught that fish, I would have finished inside of the top 10, no problem, gotten to fish the 4th day. I think I ended up finishing like 13th and just missed the final day top 10 cut. So every time I see this bait, that's what I think about. I've actually got that bait hanging up on the wall over there on my Hall of Fame bait board. But it's a really excellent bait. This is like the same one. If you guys remember, Jason Christie won a tournament on Bull Shoals, I believe it was. That's the same bait where he did it. It's an excellent bait. Next up, this is one that's caught a lot of fish for a lot of people. You've seen it in a bunch of my videos. This is just the old school Magnum Popar, not the P70, just the Magnum size. This is the Tennessee Shad definitely a go-to color for me. It's one of my just absolute favorites. You know, it creates the perfect bloop sound that you can ask for out of a topwater popper. The bait's been around for who knows how long at this point, probably 60, 70 years. And there's a reason for it. It's just one of the best poppers on the market. You can see this is one I just pulled out of the box. The hooks are all curled in because it's one that I practice with so I don't catch the fish. But it's a phenomenal popper style bait. And you can see all of these baits, and I didn't do this on purpose, but I've recognized this now. They're all kind of a little bit of a different type of bait. The next up, this is one of my absolute favorites. I've talked about it before on the channel. This is a Lucky Craft Waketail, also a discontinued bait in the yellow shore minnow. It's an absolute dynamite bait. I did replace the white feather with a Flashaboo tail that I tie. But the thing that's so awesome about this bait is when it sits in the water, it sits downward. You can see it's weighted towards the back. So it sits more vertical in the water. And on those days, specifically in the spring, when the fish are not super aggressive, they'll come up and grab the tail and just pull it under without breaking the surface. But the thing is, this prop spins so freely that if you're fishing any sort of current, or really, I mean, anywhere, when you pop this bait, it actually dives under the water and comes back up, and that tail spins freely when it's coming back up. And if you're sitting in current, the current will spin the tail on itself, so it has some extra action. I have yet to find another prop style bait that has a very free-flowing spinner on the back, and that's the biggest difference to this. Plus, that yellow shore minnow color is one of the best all-time smallmouth colors, and that's one of the reasons I like that so much. My last bait, and this is one that hasn't been around for quite as long, but it's been a while now, but it's one of my absolute go-tos when I'm out fishing. That's the Berkley Chapo. This little guy specifically, this is the 90 size in this color, the MF bluegill. Absolute killer bait during the summer months, and if you're just looking at covering water, I just love it. I catch a pile of fish on it. It doesn't matter what species it is. And in the hot weather periods, it's really tough to beat the Chapo in the MF bluegill. Absolute killer bait. So those are the 5 I have for you. I want to know, what are your 5 favorite baits, guys? Put in the comment section so that the rest of us can see. Do you agree with some of mine? Do you disagree? It's always interesting to me how some people will be like, oh, I hate a popper, or I love a popper. And I'm like, how could you not catch fish on a popper or a chugburger or any of these? They're such fantastic topwaters. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this one. I enjoyed sharing with you. I'm going to put these right back in my box, throw it back in the boat so I have it for my next tournament. And stay tuned, guys. I'll have another video coming out tomorrow for you.